right. Hi, everyone. I see people kind of joining, the number going up, but we're going to start out in the interest of time and set the stage for the conversation. Thank you for attending our webinar about how the Great Resignation, aka the Great Formation, the Great Reshuffle has impacted the employee experience. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices. And we're co-hosting this webinar with Electives, which we will get more into soon. For those who aren't familiar with AllVoices, we really believe in that psychological safety and employee feedback management to provide employees with a safe and anonymous way to report things like harassment, bias, and culture issues directly to company leadership before they become systemic problems, and really foster an environment where people can do their best work. You have access to that real-time data and proactive ways to identify these culture issues. And then I'm going to pass it over to Jason, who could tell us a little bit about Electives.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina. Yeah, my name is Jason Lavender. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Electives. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts. A little bit of context on Electives. So my co-founder and I started the company last year. Sadly, after experiencing some training that we didn't love in the workplace. And so we became really inspired to think about how do we make training something that employees truly love, and they can interact with each other, have interesting experiences, and learn from people who you might not typically get to learn from. So our teachers are FBI agents and Hamilton performers and Olympic athletes and professors. And so we just love trying to work with HR and DEI and L&D leaders to just think about learning cultures in new ways. So it's great to be here and excited to talk about the Great Resignation.
Awesome. And thank you for co-hosting this webinar with us. I think that is really important in terms of sharing experiences and learning and development as well. To really define the Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle, we're referring to this period of high attrition at companies. We're in an employee's market, in a period where folks are really reflecting on their careers. So that really asks organizations and leaders, what does it mean to really adjust and be employers of choice in today's talent market? I'm sure everybody has heard stats around 4.3 million workers have left their jobs since August, and that is according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's dating back to December 2000 as well. And then it has been estimated that the average cost to replace someone, of course, who leaves an organization is 122% of that individual's annual salary, and that includes training and also taking the time to find someone to fill that role. So with that, I will stop talking. And for our panelists, if you could introduce yourself similarly to Jason with your pronouns, role, and the work you do at your company. Theresa, we'll start with you, and I'll put the order in the chat so nobody has to memorize it.
Hi, I am Theresa Watts. I'm the Senior Vice President of Human Resources, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at True Religion Brand Jeans. My pronouns are she and her.
Awesome, and I'll pass to Adrienne.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Barnard. I'm the SVP of People Ops and Experience at Mainstay. And my pronouns are she, her, and I work with our executive team to set our people strategy for the organization.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ivanick. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a senior recruiter at Marks Connect. We are a boutique recruiting agency supporting primarily companies in the SaaS space that are going from startup to scale up.
Awesome. And then Jason did a quick introduction for us as well. But thank you so much for being here, everyone. At a high level, starting off the conversation, Theresa and Adrienne, can you tell us a little bit about how your organization has been impacted by this time period we're in, Great Resignation? Theresa, I'll pass to you first.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I think that as a leader of an organization, this may not be the best thing to say, but I think is the most honest answer. We've had an opportunity to stop and reflect the way we treat people, the way we demonstrate to people how important they are to us, how they fit into our culture, and how they fit into the future of the organization. Because let's be honest, before this, most organizations were like, you want to work for us, then you show us what you bring into the table. Why should we hire you? And I don't know if you remember, being a little kid and your mom telling you, hey, you're too good for that person. You're too good for that. And, but so now people are believing it. Now they know it. So now they know that they're coming to the interview and they're saying, hey, listen, I have 5 or 6 different offers out there. What are you going to do for me? And the interview has changed. And it's forced us as an organization, many organizations, to stop and say, how are we actually putting culture first? That's always been a great buzzword, a great buzz term. So how are we actually doing it? And how are we actually showing employees that they matter, that they are number one, that what they do impacts our bottom line, that what they do impacts our longevity, our reputation, our brand name, and our brand recognition. It impacts everything that we do. So we've had to completely revamp the way that we converse with employees, what we share and how we share, how timely we are when we share information with employees. It's been a complete, but completely marvelous restructuring for us internally.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Theresa said by probably being even more inappropriate for a people ops leader and say that it really forced us to cut through the bullshit. Yeah. And it really forced us to say, what do employees actually want and need from an organization? And go and ask them and find out and really pay attention to what they responded with and really honor some of their asks as well. I mean, we can't do everything for everyone, and not every company is for everyone. And so it really helped us reflect and recognize what matters to people and what responsibility we have as an employer to our employees. So it was a great time, I think, to really get more honest and open about what we can do to engage and retain, and then start to really continue building those foundational layers of a truly great place to work for people.
Absolutely. And along those lines too, a great place to work for like myself could be different from someone else that I'm sitting next to as well. So definitely subjective. And there is a question from one of the attendees around culture. What does that really mean at organizations? And what are the elements of your culture and your company values? Anyone can answer this question.
Okay, I'll answer. You know what, for us, it's one, every organization has their own individual DNA. And you have to first decide what that is. What works for your organization may not work for ours. What works for ours may not work for yours. So it's about what Adrienne said, asking the employees what it is you want, what type of organization that you want to work for. And we realized that, honestly, customers buy from engaged employees. So if the employee doesn't believe in the brand, they don't believe in what they're doing, and they're not engaged, how can they go out and get the buy-in from the customer? So that's what our culture first organization is basically. What is your DNA? What is it now? What tweaks do you need to make? How do you go into the lab and become a scientist and tweak the DNA just a little bit? And how do you give the employees what they want? Another something that Adrienne said too, it is about giving the employees what they want because they are the business for you. The customers shop there, they do business with us because of the employees. So employees first. Employees bring us our bonuses, employees bring us our money. They are what makes our business successful. And so just putting them first, that way, it's been a great help for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond as well, because I think a lot about culture. And I think there's 2 key things that I think about. One, no one person or department owns culture in an organization. I think for me, something that really has resonated with me that I've discovered this year is thinking about myself as a product manager and thinking about being a product manager of the process and the systems and the procedures and the programs that we build to support the culture. And it's that supportive element that I think is really important. And the other aspect of culture that I think is important, to Theresa's point around every company is different, is your values need to really be a part of that. And that's going to be super attractive to candidates as well, is if they're able to show up and really see those values you write about on your careers page show up day to day in a really positive way that helps drive momentum and engagement forward. So when it comes to culture, I think about, what are those aspects of how you interact and engage with people, and that's hiring, that's promoting, that's letting people go, that's celebrating and recognizing, and then how are your values woven into that?
Yeah, and just echoing from the candidate side of things, because culture is a question that is coming up more and more often, and actually is a reason why candidates are currently not accepting offers. And really, for me, it's about having the candidate understand what their personal values are in terms of work. So this can be things such as a growth mindset, open door policies, creating their own hours, work-life balance. Things like health above all else are things that come into play. And so as a liaison between a candidate and an employer, really making sure that those are a good match and that they fit together is really critical for me in my work and what success looks like for the candidate and for the company.
Absolutely. On that note too, I'm sure that candidates are asking many questions, hard questions, and rightfully so. Stephanie, in your kind of interactions with them, what else are they kind of asking that's different than previous years, let's say?
They're much more direct. So I really understand that they know what they're looking for. To what Theresa said, it really is the candidate market. And so they're asking me directly, how is this person as a people manager? How is this employer building rapport with you as a recruiter? Like, would you take this job if you were me? Of course, I deflect that, but, they're really interested in that. They're interested in the work-life balance, working remotely and or having the ability to go into an office as they see fit is something that is very attractive to them. And it is something that I bring up in every conversation now because so many candidates are interested in remote working. In terms of salary, of course, salary always is part of the conversation. And really now the candidates are almost able to dictate what their salary requirements are, because if an employer currently is not able to meet that, another employer is meeting that. So it's really about checking all of those boxes. And I can tell when I hop on a call that there is a series of questions and they're going down their list.
People are doing their research and homework. You can find a lot of information out there. That's also an interesting question. Would you take this job if you were me? I've never heard that before, but that's totally valid. Theresa, I know you talked about how the organization like True Religion Brand Jeans is affected overall during this time, but I know you have not only corporate employees, but field team members as well. Have you seen a difference in how talent attraction and retention is manifested in these like two kind of roles?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've seen it even more during this holiday season because, in retail, it's holiday season is really busy for us. We just got out of Black Friday where I'm happy that we all survived successfully, but it's talent retention. It's easier for corporate employees to say, okay, you can take a day off here, you can take a day off there, or you can work from home. So we had to find creative ways to give the employees in the retail stores the same type of experience that our corporate employees are getting. And we didn't know. So we just had to ask them, what is that you want? And some people wanted, they wanted comp days. So we were able to give them comp days. They wanted more employees into the store so that they can work half a day and go to their child's softball game or go to their child's Christmas play, something like that. So it was finding creative ways to show the employees in the retail that we want to retain you too. And it's more than just the perks, sending them baskets and sending them gifts and things like that. It was creating a vehicle for them to be able to, one, say, I want to talk to this employee in corporate and I want to do it my way in this way. I want to work, but I want to work this way and when I'm able to. So putting together a committee to help us, because we didn't have the answer, to help us say in retail, what works best for you. And so we have done that. We're putting together committees now. We're happy that one is going to roll out in January after the holiday. But the people who are comprising that committee are telling us right now, it's easy, guys. You guys make everything seem so hard. If you had just asked us months ago, we would have told you that, there are some days I need a 3-hour break because I want to do that. It doesn't mean that I'm not committed, but it just means that I have this to do and I'm going to come back. There are days where I need to add half a day because I want to do this. So just creating those more flexible schedules in retail, we were able to do that. And that came from the employee base and we're giving it to them.
Yeah, being able to have those transparent conversations is important. Sorry, go ahead, Adrienne.
I just wanted to jump in and just highlight how important employee listening is. And I love that Theresa's team members were comfortable enough to say, this really isn't this hard. You should have just asked us months ago. I think, historically in HR, it's been this approach of, well, these are the things you do. You set up these policies, you set up these programs. Here's how you manage retail. Here's how you manage frontline. Here's how you manage knowledge workers. And you just put these things in place and you set it and forget it. And if people have complaints, they come to you and that's what you're here for. And really there's so much more power if we're able to, I'm gonna, keep sounding this bell or whatever the phrase is, but step into like a product manager role and do user listening, right? What are the users looking for? What are the features? What are the, services and tools and such that we can supply for them? And the perks and benefits are evolving. Employees don't really want ping pong tables or free snacks, or they're not even in offices, right? But they don't want these perks that fall flat. They want to be able to have flexibility to go see their kids play softball. They want to be able to have flexibility to pick up extra shifts because they're planning for a vacation. And all of this is just evolving so much. And I think we as people leaders need to just slow down and listen to people more because the solutions are there.
I think just to add on to that, because I love this kind of product manager mindset. Related to that as far as listening, but also just experimenting. Like if you think of the product A/B experiments that happen all the time, our company we don't have a head of people yet. We went from 2 people to 10. And so it's early days and we run experiments all the time. But just to share one, as we started onboarding people, we instituted a sign-on donation bonus, which was really a nominal amount, but just we wanted to donate to a charity that was meaningful to that person. And it was an experiment, but what happened was it just led to more interesting conversations right in that first week, because all of a sudden you get to find out why that's important. It leads to broader conversations. And so it was one little thing. It wasn't this huge, relocation bonus that we could do, but it was something that just generated the conversation. And so I think in that product mindset, if you can iterate and just test things, you'll see what things resonate for not only the company, but for the prospective hire as well.
Absolutely. I think that's the second part of active listening as well, is taking in all of the information, ingesting it, and then making the changes and communicating that effectively to your team and also potential folks who are going to join your team as well. In terms of things that can be changed to make sure you're communicating that to folks, job requirements and descriptions are often a place where people are like, oh, this is for me, this is not for me. Stephanie, have you seen people kind of take this feedback and change their job descriptions to be more inclusive? For example, not having 10 years of experience for an associate level role, or just being more open to these transferable skills? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that during this period, a lot of people have honed on what their passion is, and we're seeing a lot of career pivots. So there just isn't as many experienced candidates in the space right now. So I am seeing employers drop the years of experience requirement. I mentioned already flexible salary, On top of that, though, is really streamlining their interview process, because candidates really want to know from the get-go what the interview process looks like. And they're not looking to go through a 2-month process like traditionally a lot of SaaS companies have had. They're looking at 2, 3, 4 weeks at most, because if you don't act quick enough, they're interviewing somewhere else that is more streamlined, is more direct, and is able to come to that decision quite faster. Additionally, looking for development opportunities and what that looks like as part of the requirements. How are they going to add to their skill set, add to the tools in their toolbox? So sort of not just their traditional scope either is what candidates are looking for right now, and what I've seen a shift in requirements, which personally I think is very exciting. And for an employee to grow and develop into the roles of the future, I think is very important in general for the future of the economy and job opportunities.
Growth and development are also something that people are looking for. It's not like people are going into roles and thinking they're going to be there for 20 years. And really, again, having this growth mindset, which I believe someone mentioned as well, continuous learning as an individual, no matter what company you are at, is a differentiator. Jason, I want to ask you specifically around, and I know there's questions from the audience around employee engagement. What are key ways that you can show that a company is actually invested in the development of their people as well?
Yeah, so Adrienne and I have talked about this in the past, and the term that we've used is cross-training, which is so interesting. If you think about it in like the physical development space or exercise, we've all used cross-training, and the analogy we talk about is if I want to become a better cyclist, I can't ride a bike every single day. Like I need to work on my leg muscles and some other cardio workouts. And so cross-training, we've all kind of appreciated in the physical development. But as it pertained to historical professional development, it was very like hyper focused on upskilling, and all the accountants should go to the accounting training classes, and all the salespeople should go to the sales classes. And there wasn't that cross-training opportunity where, you know, the whole software engineering team can take a public speaking class or a persuasion and influence class. And so we're starting to see more of that cross-training opportunity where employees at the entire company can take a variety of different types of classes. And I think the kind of unintended consequence of that we all love to see is people are just in breakout rooms with people that they don't typically work with. So in this kind of remote hybrid world, we always get this feedback of, you know, I love the class, I love the instructor, but I finally got to meet, you know, Josh in marketing, and Josh has been here 6 months and I've never actually interacted with Josh. And so part of it is just thinking creatively of how do you use learning and training and development as a broader engagement platform to just get people in a more collaborative mindset. So I think that's one. And then related to kind of the employer of choice, I think, you know, all of our conversations so far have hinted at this, but employees can see through what you're trying to do with the class. And so if it's a very specific class that is like, we just need this to hit our KPI and you need to go into it, it's going to feel mandatory. It's not going to feel as exciting to the person enrolling. But if you start offering classes that are genuinely helpful for the person, and to Theresa's point, if you help the person, you help the worker ultimately, then employees can see that and they feel like this company is actually trying to just help me grow my skill set, but also personally at home or outside of work as well.
Can you share some of the kind of more popular electives that people take? Because I think when people think about kind of continuous learning, it's like it is like accounting 101, accounting 102. But you mentioned kind of avoiding burnout, parenting in a hybrid workplace, which are very relevant topics from folks who are burned out and are parents. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the two kind of broad buckets of most popular electives. So in the last year, one has been, which is a really broad bucket, but diversity, equity, inclusion has been a really kind of hot topic. But what I think is interesting is how kind of niche and focused the electives are that get the most requests. So it's no longer implicit bias 101 or microaggressions 101. It's really understanding, gender identity from somebody who transitioned a few years ago, and you hear their experience in the workplace, and now all of a sudden you understand the lived experience and the empathy builds and so forth. We've had a lot of class requests on like Native American history last month, that people just hadn't, they celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day, but then they felt like I actually don't know enough history, and would love to dive deeper there. So those have been the popular ones on the DEI front. And then Christina, to your point, a lot of manager training, a lot of leadership development training, but Adrienne and I have brainstormed this a lot. Like there's a lot of requests on burnout and mindfulness and parenting. And again, it's just, the signal is so clear that when an employer offers these different types of classes, that they are genuinely trying to help the person. And the employee feedback has been, so phenomenal for the employer once they have that opportunity to learn. The one other thing I would say that we've picked up on as a trend in the last few months is not just keeping training inside the virtual four walls of one employer. And so we've seen, like multiple ERGs across 3 or 4 different companies put together a training together. Or, the parents group at multiple companies take a parenting class together. And so again, there's this feeling of not only learn the skill set, but also how do you build community amongst people who are interested in similar topics, and rely on those people, post the live learning opportunity.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely important. And to your point around manager training, I definitely think nobody is born a, phenomenal people manager. It takes practice, intentionality, and resources as well. And I think part of that kind of interview process as well is talking to your manager, and when you're hired as well, having continuous conversations around growth in the team. Stephanie, I'm sure you get questions around this all the time from candidates who want to know the 411 about their potential manager. How do you kind of think about or advise folks to really demonstrate that they are invested in the development of their team?
Well, the first point of contact with a candidate when you're working with a recruiter would be your recruiter. So making sure that you identify a recruiting partner that aligns with your culture, that makes just like that initial splash phenomenal for the candidate. And then secondary, when they have that first interview, having the manager build rapport with them and asking them really thoughtful questions, to Theresa's point, not just what they can do for the company, but also like how they can fit in, what their hopes and dreams are, what they're looking for, and showing a vested interest during that initial interview is really key for the candidate experience. And then from there, I think it's really about co-creating what that growth looks like. There is no perfect puzzle. Every candidate is very different. They have very different needs, wants, and desires. And so having a manager that's willing to take the time to understand that and co-create what that path looks like with the future employee is very, very important. And I think what all candidates are very keen on.
And I'll just add one kind of interesting anecdote to Stephanie's comment. I think there tends to be a perception of new manager training, like that's who needs it the most. But I would just say anecdotally, we sometimes get these kind of veteran managers to just sit in on classes to observe, and a lot of good things happen from that. So I think there's always good management refreshers across the board. I think the industry has kind of been really focused on junior managers, but especially no one's really managed hybrid workforces, historically. So I think there's so much opportunity of all levels that I think can be really important.
I love that. Just chime in for a second. I was speaking to one of our leaders the other day, and she used an outdated term for leadership. And I go, I haven't heard that term in years. Where'd you get that from? And then she goes, oh, really? Well, what is the new term? What do we use? So that was a great management training session for her, just in that 5-minute conversation. So I love that, having the more experienced and tenured managers sit in on those classes, because they learn so much. Everything is evolving, and also to just make it mandatory. for your management team or senior leaders to periodically go through updated training, whether it be internally, externally, take a webinar or do whatever. I think that's great point, Jason.
And I'll bring up generational stuff. We haven't touched on that, but nobody's managed the generations coming into the workforce now because they're new to the workforce. And every generation is different and they have different motivations. They have different needs. They have different ways of wanting to work. And I think I applaud the newer generations in the workforce because of what they're making us all consider and recognize and reflect on. So, I mean, it just goes to show how you have to be continually learning and continually putting yourself in positions to be open to that learning.
I think that's a great point. One of my recruiters said to me, Theresa, this is not in your day anymore. People don't stick around in jobs 5, 10, 20 years anymore. So as we're reviewing resumes, because it looks like, this generation, they're jumping, from job to job, but they're not. They're exploring other opportunities and they're learning and they're expanding. So the resumes of today look a little bit different from the resumes of years before when people stayed at companies for 20 and 30 years. So it's, to your point, evolving and changing with the times. So.
Yes.
Yeah, just to touch on that, also the interplay of technology. The other day, a candidate mentioned wanting to send a video resume instead of a traditional resume. And so just how us being on Zoom right now, how interviewing through a Zoom or Google Meet and the introduction of video in the whole process is also really interesting with the newer generations.
I think in a lot of workplaces, I don't want to generalize, but you have people and employees who are at different parts of their lives, different parts of their career paths, and just have a lot going on, and you're managing across a lot of different personalities as well. And when you have people coming in and coming out to the fabric, you do want to intentionally and in a genuine way create this psychological safety that a lot of folks are talking about as well. And we can't take for granted. It doesn't just happen. In order for people to do their best work with everybody, they need to feel physically, of course, and psychologically safe. Adrienne, I want to ask how you kind of cultivate this in practice as well at Mainstay, because we talked about there's like a little bit less attrition that you're seeing than other companies, noting that attrition necessarily isn't a bad thing, as we talked about, but how do you think about psychological safety?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have seen some people leave. I'm not going to say that we haven't seen anybody leave. And I think one of the things that I think we've done really well is making our values truly a part of our culture. And so we are able to carry ourselves with integrity because we do what we say we're going to do. And we don't just put things on paper just to put them there. We truly strive to show up that way every day. Some of the other ways that we've been able to build some more of that psychological safety is when we do employee listening, like through engagement or pulse surveys, we follow up with here's what we heard, and we share the results with the team, and we commit to actions forward. And we're continually doing them and consistently sharing them and sharing the feedback we've received and the actions we're going to take. And it's not just me doing that. The entire leadership team does that with their departments, because I think it's really important that you're not just working to build it across the entire organization, but you're also ensuring that you're facilitating that happening in each individual department as well. Because if there's any toxicity anywhere in the organization, that's going to get out to everywhere, right? And so really working to ensure that we have leaders and managers in place that are fostering that listening and that responsiveness as well. I think those are some of the key things that we've been able to do.
Along the lines of toxicity, I know we've had a question around kind of hybrid and remote work. So the question from the audience member is, how does your organization promote healthy collaboration and protect against toxicity in the workplace culture, especially in a highly remote work environment? And I think this is pretty kind of relevant to our conversation as well, with organizations setting up non-negotiables for, okay, if we have an internal meeting, your video is off, or, if we're hybrid, then everybody joins in the Zoom. How are you thinking about kind of mitigating that toxicity and promoting collaboration?
One of the ways we do it is in those pulse and engagement surveys, we're asking about that kind of stuff, right? And we're doing them quarterly. So we're collecting data on a quarterly basis. And then the other thing is I've encouraged managers to do stay interviews. So checking with and doing skip level stay interviews as well. So not just talking to the people that are directly reporting to them, but talking to the people that report to their direct reports as well. And that way, because even if you're a tiny organization, it's hard for people ops to stay on top of everything, right? And so you really have to be facilitating those managers growing those skills to be checking in on these things and noting what are these signs of potential toxicity or burnout look like. And so I've been talking a lot with managers, more specifically around burnout, about what is true burnout, because I think we're overusing the term and not really understanding what true burnout is. And then looking for some signs and symptoms of that, and how can they help call attention to those and encourage their employees to shift away from the path to burnout. So I think stay interviews and skip level conversations can really help bring to light if there is any toxicity for those managers. And then of course, people ops as needed can partner to help figure out what the root cause is and have some clearing conversations to hopefully remove it.
Theresa, how do you kind of promote and cultivate psychological safety at True Religion brand jeans as well?
I have to be honest with you, there are some days when I walk into the office and it is, I don't know what's going on, because people are just doing their own thing. They're themselves. They're bringing their lived experiences. And I'm like, gosh, I had no idea this guy was a hockey star, or this guy was a soccer player, or this guy had, 5 kids and they're all at UCLA and doing all of this. Because every day, if you actually look, and people are trying to tell you who they are, they want you to ask who they are, and they want to share to your point, Jason, they want to share their lived experiences with you at work. So you have to ask, honestly, when you when you walk past someone's desk and they proudly displaying their family for all to see, ask them about it. Don't just glare and then walk away, because listen, people don't put pictures of their family on their desk if they aren't proud of them. People don't come in with their championship hockey jersey on if they aren't proud of their team, if they aren't proud of what they're doing. People don't come in with the wicker basket that they made on the weekend with you if they don't want you to ask. And that's what people do. And that you have to ask people about themselves. Don't be afraid to do it. There are ways to politely ask someone, what did you do the weekend? Oh, I saw that on your desk. Is that important to you? Can you tell me a little bit more about it? So when I say I walk into the office and I don't know what's going on, I don't, because there's so many different conversations about culture, about their lived experiences that are going on. I get excited. So we spend that time, not even just doing our lunch hour, when someone just walks past you in the office and you stop them and say, well, what are you doing? Or someone will come into my office and say, hey, let me show you pictures from my weekend. And I'm like, wow, you're an avid traveler, that type of thing. So I love that. I'm sorry, I get so excited. I love it because, it's an opportunity to ask someone about why are you wearing that outfit? Is it traditional from your country? Is it traditional from your religion? Where did you get it from? And all those conversations start. So for me, that is a psychologically safe environment where you feel safe asking the person about themselves, and the person feels safe telling you about themselves. They feel to put the pictures of their kids in their desk. I love that. That's a psychologically safe environment for me.
I love that. And that's really intentional. I know that we've talked about before how you go in stores and you're folding clothes with your team members as well, and really putting a name to a face and generally asking about their interests and showing you're invested in them as as people. I want to ask how you think about operationalizing and collecting kind of that ongoing feedback in a psychologically safe way, knowing that everybody is coming in with their different experiences where feedback was either welcome or not so welcome. And this is both in an anonymous or a non-anonymous way. What are some of the levers? I know Adrienne talked about this as well in terms of poll surveys, engagement, asking people one-on-ones, and all these different ways as well.
Yeah, we do have surveys, but I have to be honest with you. Since we've started using AllVoices, and I'm not just saying that because since we've started using AllVoices, the employees are just so they're using it, using it at a great rate for things. I gotta be honest. For example, one employee said, "Hey, listen, because we're a fashion company, so we have clothing racks all over the place." One employee said, "Hey, listen, there are too many clothes here. I can't walk down the path." But they were so comfortable telling us that. So, okay, and for me, that's a small issue because we can fix it. So it isn't just the small issues. I'm sorry, it isn't just the big issues, it's the small issues and everything in between. So they feel comfortable doing that. And then when we found out that some people were anonymously expressing their concerns, and then we're doing the investigation because you can still communicate with that person anonymously. They're so comfortable, they'll call us and say, "Hey, I'm the one who lodged that complaint." But you made them feel so comfortable. You didn't make them feel bad. So they were like, "Well, let me just stop the pretense. Let me just pick up the phone and call them and say." So I love that. So it is that type of feedback we encourage. When I text, when I call the store and I say, "Hey, you know what, when I was there the other day, I noticed this, or you weren't as your chipper self, here's my cell phone number, give me a call." Or I'm just sitting around the house on Saturdays, just give me a call, I don't care, that type of thing. And our senior leadership team, they have that too, that the other members of our senior leadership team, they have that type of, they believe in that as well. So I think everyone is very comfortable because we've created that open, not just an open door policy. For me, it's an open feels policy. It's, I'm feeling this way and I want to tell you about it. I'm feeling this way. Didn't you see me feeling that way the other day and you didn't say anything about it? So it's that getting that type, one, you can count, that is quantifiable. How many people stopped by your office and said that? How many people gave you a call and said that? But we do also have the engagement surveys. And yeah, those are traditional, and we do that so that we can get the numbers. But if you're really talking to your employees and listening, and you can count how many people called me on my cell phone on a Saturday, how many people stopped by my office this day. Those are numbers too. Those are analytics that you can use to gauge how successful you are.
I think those are really good kind of touch points. There's not just one way to say, okay, we're listening to employees here. It's a multitude or a multi-pronged strategy, I should say. We do have another kind of question and comment that I wanted to ask in the discussion. So such a great point, Theresa. People want to be asked about their lived experiences in a remote work environment. I find that most people don't ask, especially those that are new graduates and have never worked in person. How can you extend that in a virtual workplace when you aren't seeing what's going on their desk? Adrienne, I think you had some comments here as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that because we are a fully remote environment. We do have an office, but people don't go to it. And the lease is up at the end of this month, actually, and we won't be renewing it. And I've actually found, so I've now worked basically virtually in 2 organizations. And I will say that love it or hate it, Slack or Teams, they're very powerful tools in terms of building virtual culture. And I know that for some people, myself included, who's slightly old school HR just because of how I grew up in this space, it can be hard to let go of the in-person and to feel like you have to build this culture completely virtually. But embracing it, I've seen, has really helped foster this sense of people truly sharing who they are in this virtual space. So some of the ways that we do it is we allow employees to create channels. They can create any channel they want in Slack. So they can be about TV shows. We have one about music where people share what they're listening to. We have one that's for pets and animals. It's probably the most popular one. We have one about food that people are cooking or eating or buying or seeing. We have a travel one. And we have just random kind of water cooler as well. And every once in a while, I'll say, hey, everybody thread what you did over the weekend. And so people can share pictures about what they did, how they spent their time outside of work, which I find to be really inviting and welcoming. The other way that in a virtual environment, I've modeled people bringing themselves to work, since they're calling in from their homes now, is when my kids were still home during the pandemic, I encouraged them to come in and interrupt me. And that helped to show employees, like, you can be interrupted. You can have your kids come on camera. You can have your pets barking. You can have people coming into your space, your roommates, whoever it is. We welcome that. We welcome the interruptions because we truly want to see you. So I think to Theresa's point about the leadership modeling that behavior and truly showing that, hey, we're human too, and we're here to care for you, and we want you to bring yourselves, can be really helpful. And the other point for new grads that you're bringing on that I would just say is making it a part of your onboarding process. So we invite people during the onboarding process to introduce themselves in team meetings and share some fun information about themselves, not about work. And that helps just get them started on the right foot of, like, we want to hear about you as a person. We don't just want you to show up and do your job and log off. And if that is what you want to do, that's okay too. But, you know, if you have a pet, join Pets and Animals. If you like to cook a lot, join Food Network. So those are a couple of the tips I have about some of the cultural norms that you can create for a virtual work environment.
I'll just share one super random question, but I've found it to work really well. So one of our teachers, he used to recruit spies for the FBI. So he teaches a whole class on building rapport. But in one of his classes, he talked about how there was times where he was, trying to recruit somebody who the person had a completely different lived experience than him. And he just didn't know where to start to kind of get that conversation, that trust going. And the statement or the question he would ask is, tell me about a family tradition that you have. And he just found everybody has some kind of family tradition, and our traditions may be very different, but we can at least share the common bond of a family tradition. And it always stuck with me as just such an interesting, you can take that in so many different places. So I always share it whenever I can think of it.
I love that. I think that's a great question, and everybody's definition of like traditions and families is different. So it really starts a conversation of getting to know someone as well. I know before kind of we hopped on this call as well, we were talking about not only flexibility for employees being able to bring their full selves to work and being able to kind of log off and log on. Some people are quote unquote double logging on for job sharing or side gigs, or trying to, double, triple that productivity and dollar. Are you seeing kind of people sharing that with you at the forefront, or is this something that people are looking at? Stephanie, I'll pass to you first from your perspective in terms of job sharing.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have candidates sharing with me that they have a side gig or that they're trying to multitask and juggle two jobs at the same time. But I think that what I am seeing is that people do want to make their own hours. They want to be their own boss. And so they might be more open to a contractor situation where they're not necessarily the traditional quote unquote employee, but they have that flexibility to be more of an independent contractor, independent contributor. So that's what I'm seeing from where I sit.
Are you seeing similar trends, Theresa and Adrienne, at your organization as well? Is it something that is discouraged or encouraged, I should say, as well?
I mean, if people are doing it, they haven't told us, and it hasn't impacted their productivity. So more power to them. When I saw that Wall Street Journal article and I read it, I'm like, I think they're making a mountain out of a molehill here.
Yeah. I
don't feel bad for the employers. I actually felt for the guy in that article who had just had a baby and was working two jobs. And I'm like, this is gonna be painful for you. But I haven't seen it specifically. I mean, we have a handful of contractors, and we're definitely open to that arrangement when it comes to hiring people, especially for specialized skill sets. And I've always been flexible and open to that. And yeah, I mean, we haven't seen it specifically. I definitely have heard that it's more of a trend in the market, that people are just wanting to create their own ways of working and doing it in a very different way than the traditional approach. And I'm here for it. I'm here for the journey. Like, let's go. I'm open to the possibilities, and I'm definitely all about innovation and, turning stuff on its head.
Yeah, we were having a difficult time getting candidates for our positions. And we talked to the recruiters and they were saying, well, no one wants to come to the office 5 days a week, anymore. And they're right. So we changed it. And I have to be honest with you, a lot of times when I'm scheduling meetings or calls with people, I'll say, are you in the office this day? Or are you working from home this day? Or how do you want to meet? Virtually? You want to do it in person, that type of thing. So it's, we're hiring temps for our organization to just work for us, True Religion temps, contractors. So yeah, we've had to change the entire way that we've seen the workday. And not just for senior leaders, like for my team knows, do not schedule a meeting for me before 10 a.m. Because I'm just not feeling it. So we allow everyone else to do the same thing. Listen, on Wednesdays, I'm working from home because I just am. Don't schedule anything for me before 3 o'clock on Tuesdays because I'm doing something else. And it's that type of flexibility that works. And when speaking with my CEO, he's like, I don't care. They're getting the work done. They're productive. Nothing's late. They're not missing meetings. They're showing up when we need them. So honestly, guys, who cares what time the work is getting done? Who cares where you're getting it done? I can sit at Starbucks all day and I'll be more productive than I am in the office. So it's changing that mindset, and I love that. I love that we're doing it, and I love that this has forced us to do it. This has given us a kick in the butt that we need, but it's been a perfect kick in the butt.
I think meeting people where they are and understanding that the work output is being done at their height productivity, I think that's definitely a flip of the workplace that we've known for many, many years. I know we are coming up on our last couple of minutes and we could be talking about this for a much longer time, but I do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to answer kind of the final kind of question in terms of a call to action for really employers and leaders to really create and cultivate employers of choice. That means continuous growth developments, internal mobility, psychologically safe place, and making sure that they're listening to employees. But I will start with Stephanie, and I'll put the order in the chat here as well.
Yeah, definitely. So just to echo what I said earlier, really having a very dialed and interview process that is very clear from the get-go, where your company culture is shining through. And after that first interview, that candidate is so pumped, they can't stop talking about the interview with their friends, they're begging for the offer, right? And on top of that, I just think the 2 words for employers is curiosity and adaptability. Ask lots of questions, really get to know who you could potentially be working with and who you're working with currently. And with that, being able to be adaptable, be open, be curious, I think is really, really key. And it will lead to really great things.
I love that, Stephanie. I was saying, I'm always telling people, listen, if you don't get culture right, you fail everywhere else. So that is the last thing I want to leave people with. If you don't have employee engagement, you're not going to have customer engagement. If your culture is one where no one wants to be there, no one cares about the brand, no one cares about the people that they work with every day, then guess what? That's going to the customers are going to feel that, and they're not going to want to do business with you. So culture first, guys. Get the culture right. I think you'll be successful in every place else.
Yeah, I think for me, a call to action is to be nimble yet focused. and slow down. There's a lot going on right now. The world of work is changing rapidly around us, and pay attention to the trends, keep them top of mind, listen to your people ops leaders, and stay nimble in terms of being able to flex to the changes and the shifts, but don't try to do it all at once. Because a lot of this is going to take time. It's going to take some patience from organizations and leaders to ride the wave of these changes and see, what it really looks like at the end, or, the next milestone, because there is no end. And stay focused on what matters for you and your business, and don't try to be everything for everybody, because then you're just going to be inauthentic, and people are going to smell that a mile away and not want to work for you.
Yeah, and I think for me, the analogy that I've been thinking a lot about has been, I don't know if you remember reading when Steve Jobs was designing the original Apple campus, he always talked about these innovation collisions. Like, how do you get the product and marketing people bumping into each other and sharing ideas? And I think now in this hybrid remote world, like, how do we just become more intentional about people collisions? I think so much of what we talked about was designing opportunities for people to be in breakout rooms with each other, for people to share personal anecdotes, to get to know each other, to share ideas. And so whatever is important to that particular employee, to Adrienne's point, you're never going to get it all right. But if you at least put some systems in place that employees who love talking about their family can talk about their family on Slack, and if for other employees, they don't ever want to talk about their family, but they can take a new class on something else, they have those opportunities. And so I think finding ways to just build a system that fits everybody, but knowing that each individual is going to take their own path and collide with, hopefully, people that they intended to collide with, but also the unintended collisions as well.
Absolutely. I think that is really a good note to end on in terms of creating an ecosystem that is sustainable, supportive, inclusive, and also adaptable, as well as things are constantly changing. Jason, Theresa, Adrienne, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on our Electives and AllVoices webinar about how the Great Resignation, reshuffle, what have you, has impacted the employee experience. If you have questions around Electives or AllVoices, please feel free to reach out to Jason or myself. But have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone, and a happy start to 2022 if we don't see you.